Good morning, dear children. As you know, AAT Sri Lanka has organized webinar series. Today also we are having another session. Topic is business management, subject at level 2. Chapter 1 topic, that is introduction to management and different perspective of management. This covers 10% of our syllabus. And eminent lecturer join with that. He is Mr. Chamara Pemathilita. Mr. Chamara has MSc as well as MBA, and also he's a member of SIN. Without taking more time, I invite Mr. Chamara to conduct the session. Over to Mr. Chamara.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning all the students who are joining with this session, And today actually, now we are going to discuss a new session of new subject in the second stage. And before that, I hope everyone is doing good and staying at home, staying safe at home. And because we are experiencing quite different situation in the country, and with this situation, AAT Sri Lanka initiated online lecture series where we can give and provide all these lectures online so that you can access all these materials from your home. And today, with that explanation, and also I want to thank AAT Sri Lanka for having me and inviting me to conduct these sessions. And we had already done few sessions in the second stage and the first stage, as well as the third stage. So today we are going to focus, as I told you, today we are going to discuss a session in the second stage, a subject in the second stage, that is business management. And in that subject, we are going to discuss the first chapter, introduction to management, and where introduction to management and different perspective of management. So this is what we are going to discuss today. So with this, now this is the content that I'm going to discuss with you today. So meaning of management, we're starting from meaning of management and resources versus assets, and then multiple objectives of a business, efficiency versus effectiveness, and then productivity, types of productivity and how to enhance productivity, management process and need of management, types of managers at different levels of organizations, and finally, the managerial roles and skills at different levels. So these are the content that we are going to discuss today. So now if you can, now you can take a look at the intended learning outcome. So these are the areas, actually these are the learning outcome that we focus on and expect you to understand. So basically explain the basic concept of management and identify the fundamental purpose of a business, right? So explain the role of efficiency and effectiveness and productivity in business operation and their relationship, and explain types of managers and managerial roles and skills at different level. So then identify management process. So after these sessions, after the end of these sessions, you will be able to understand and learn these outcomes, right? So you need to see whether you know these topics and content after the sessions. So then you have achieved the objective of the sessions. So with that, now let's start with the meaning of management. So management, now there are a few definitions. Now there are many definitions when it comes to meaning of management. But here I have taken three prominent definitions of management. So basically, if I go through one by one, management is the first one. Management is the attainment of organizational goals in an effective and efficient manner through planning, organizing, leading, and controlling of organizational resources. Okay, so that is one definition. And the other one, management is the art of getting things done through others. So finally, another definition, management is the process of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling of all organizational member and usage of other resources to be reaching the organizational goals which have been specified. Okay, so now if I go one by one these definitions in detail. Now, first one, so there are specific terms that we need to highlight here in the first definition. So the lessons, actually the next couple of slides that I'm going to discuss with you will be based on these highlighted terms and specific words. So one is, now in these definitions, when you look at this, you can see there is term organizational goals, right? So now management focuses on attainment or achievement of organizational goals. So organizational goals is one key word in these definitions and in management as well. And then you need to see, then you can see in an effective and efficient manner. Now you are not just achieving goals, but you need to focus them in an effective and efficient manner. So then those are another two words that we need to highlight here in this definition. And also there are another four activities that we do in planning and in management. Those are planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And also you can see another word, organizational resources. So these are the key words, key terms that we can find in this definition. So as I told you, so few next slides that I'm going to discuss with you will be based on these keywords, and these keywords will be more elaborated in the coming slides, in the coming explanations. Okay, so that is one definition, and this is very important, and it includes all the components of management. So those are the definitions that we can use to define management. And now let's take a look at the next one. Next slide, the nature of management. Now here we are going to discuss the nature of management, what kind of thing management is. So what is the nature of management? Now we say management, now we say that every business needs a management, right? So without managing them properly, they will not be able to survive in the market, and then they will not be able to attract customers and compete with the competitors and all these things. So now what is the nature of management? So usually now you can see these characteristics in management. So management bases the purposes and purposes. Now, management need always have a purpose, right? So it is driven by a purpose. It is based on purpose. And the other thing, management always use organizational resources to achieve goals. Now, these resources include organizational, physical, and financial, and human resources, right? So management is always focusing on using and utilizing these resources to achieve organizational goals. And management is a continuous process. We can't just stop management, like now we manage a company only for 1 month, only for 6 months, only for 1 year. Now you can't do that. So management, you have to do that continuously. So that's why we say it is a continuous process. And management is important to every organization. In same way, even though the organization's mission, size, and the cultures are different, management is important to each and every organization, right? So you can't run a business without managing it properly. So management works with the effort of individual groups and makes them to achieve the organizational objective. So in an organization, there are different individuals who engage in business activities, in various operational activities. So when we do and when we get things done from these different individuals, and they have to come up with, they have to like motivate all these individuals to a common goal, right? So then management work is the effort of individual groups, and they need to, so management is always focusing on working with and working with these different individuals, right? So make them to achieve organizational objectives and goals. So management is a dynamic process. So why we say management is a dynamic process is because it is always changing. Now, if you look at how we manage companies, like maybe 15, 10 years back, it is different, right? So now management is always changing. There are certain things that we can take even to the future, but still the management is a dynamic process where we make a lot of changes to the ways we manage organizations. And also management is an art. Why we say it's an art is because it required necessary knowledge and abilities and experience, and also skills and some kind of creativity, right? So management involves some kind of innovations. Now we, when we do manage businesses, we have to innovate, we have to find new ways of doing things. So in order to do that, what drive us is the creativity. Now creativity, so when it comes to innovation, the thing that we need to have is the creativity. So creativity will drive innovativeness or innovations. So these are the nature of management when we look at the management, right? This is the nature. So then and then we are going to discuss organizational resources and assets. Okay, so now if I go back to our definition, now you can see here, management is the attainment of organizational goals in an effective and efficient manner through planning, organizing, leading, and controlling of organizational resources. Right now you can see a term called organizational resources. So now we are going to discuss that part separately in detail. So what we mean by organizational resources. Okay, so the organizational resources are the inputs which are used for producing goods and services uh, considered as organizational resources, right? So what we use to produce goods and services are called resources. These resources can be identified as 7 M's and I. So why we say why we call them as 7 M's, because they start all these resources from M, and there is another resource that we use, and that is information, and that starts with I. So we say 7 M's and I. Right now you can see the resources: men, money, machines, material, method, minutes, and information. So these are the resources that we use to produce goods and services. Okay, so now if you take a look at these assets, now according to that, assets is the way of investing organizational funds. So assets are the things where we invest, or the things that we invest money. So assets can be categorized into current assets and fixed assets as examples. Okay, so then we need to talk about purposes of an organization. So now so this is also highlighted in the definition that we discussed at the beginning. So now organizational purposes are the end results which is hoped to achieve in the given time period. So these purposes can be categorized into different categories, right? So when we identify these purposes, one criteria is the importance. So we actually categorize these purposes based on different criteria. One is based on the importance of the purpose, right? So under that, we have two subcategories, that is primary purpose and the secondary purpose. Now in the primary purpose, So the purpose of the organization which must be achieved. Now, there is a primary purpose for each and every organization. So that is what we call primary purpose. Now, let's say every organization need to ensure the existence, and they need to improve continuously. So they can't stay in the same place in the market, and they can't have the same market share. So they need to improve continuously, and also they need to exist in the market. So that is a primary objective. And so the other type of purpose is the secondary, which is uh, which enhance to achieve organizational primary purposes. Now there are certain purposes that we use to uh, achieve the primary purpose of the organization. Now, let's say increasing quality, generating innovations, improvement of prestige. So all these things will help us to achieve our primary objective, primary purpose. Now, primary purpose is to exist and improve and expect a growth, have a growth in the business. So in order to have a growth and in order to exist in the business, we always need to focus these kind of aspects. Increase quality, generate innovations, and all these things, right? So the other criteria is the classification is the based on criteria. So there are two criterias: an economic purpose and non-economic purpose. So now there are certain activities that we do involve in increasing our profits and sales. So those are called economic purposes. Now you can see here the results we generate through involving in economic activities. So those are called economic purposes. And non-economic purpose, the important purpose which should be achieved as socially and morally. Example, welfare, satisfaction, and innovations. So now usually when we do these welfare and social responsibility, all these things like uh, don't bring direct sales and profits, but there is some kind of involvement in increasing profit and sales. So those are called non-economic purposes. So then, and based on time duration, we can categorize purposes. Short-term purposes, less than 1 year, and long-term purposes, more than 10 years. So purposes can be categorized into three. So those are the areas that we just explained. And then we need to talk about another aspect, that is efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, so efficiency, it relates with the organizational inputs. Now, when it comes to efficiency, it always talks about the inputs, right? So, and effectiveness always focuses on the output. Now, here actually what we do is it explains about how to utilize inputs to achieve organizational goals. Now, if we say that we are using resources efficiently, then we say that we use our resources with a minimum wastage and lower cost. So efficiency always focuses on usage of the resources, and that's what we highlight in the efficiency. And now you can see here, when we are using resources efficiently, we maintain minimum wastage from one side, and on this other side, we have the lowest cost, right? So, and then if we use these resources efficiently and efficiently with lowest cost and minimum wastage, we can say that we fulfill the goals in right way. And also now you can see here, uh, efficiency is doing things right. Now doing things right means you need to find the correct methods to do things, right? So that's what we call doing things right. Uh, so now when doing things right means always we use the minimum wastage. Now if someone comes and say that, so I did something right using a lot of resources and making a lot of wastage, so then we can say you are not efficient. Actually, you are not doing things right. So if you are doing things right, you use lowest wastage and lowest cost and minimum wastage, right? So now you can see here the bottom of the slide how we calculate efficiency. So efficiency can be calculated from this formula. So the amount of utilized resources divided by the amount of allocated resources and multiplied by 100. So from that formula, we can calculate the efficiency. And then we are going to talk about the effectiveness. Now, as I told you, efficiency is all about inputs, right? It deals with the inputs. Now, effectiveness focuses on the outputs. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the definition first. Now, what it explains, what this, what this slide explains. So, effectiveness explains the degree to which planned decided result are achieved by the organization. Okay, so the results of the organization exposed through its output. Therefore, effectiveness relate with the output. Above mentioned two concepts correlate with the organizational transformation process. Now, if you take a look at these uh, output, now we can say that an organization is effective by looking at whether they have achieved those objectives set at the beginning or not. To what extent they have achieved these objectives. Now, that we can say by looking at the output, right? So now usually we put all these inputs into a transformation process where we take outputs. Now, how efficient we are, we can say how efficient we are by looking at the inputs. So inputs, when you are putting inputs, we need to use low wastage, minimum wastage and low cost. So if you use an inputs in that way, we can say we are very efficient. And on the other side, we need to see our output, and if we have achieved what we expected to achieve, and then we can say we are effective as well, right? So now that is what we mean by efficiency and effectiveness. And I need to tell you, efficiency is always focusing on the inputs, and effectiveness is always focusing on the outputs. Okay, so now you can see here the effect of effectiveness and efficiency on organizational primary purposes, right? So according to this uh, graph and diagram, diagram, you can see how efficiency and effectiveness works in an organization. Now, there are two criterias. Now, one side is efficiency and the other side is effectiveness. Now, if I take one situation, now let's take this situation A. So in that situation, what that company is doing is basically that company focuses more on the efficiency. So that's why they have high efficiency. But if you look at the effectiveness, they're not focusing on the effectiveness. So their effectiveness is low. So when a company uses its resources with low wastage and minimum wastage and low cost, so that's why they have the efficiency. But when it comes to achievement of goals, they are not that good. That's why their effectiveness is low. So now in this situation, this cell A, you can see that kind of situation where they have high efficiency but low effectiveness. So when an organization experiences a situation like that, what happens is that company dies slowly, right? Why? Now it doesn't die quickly, because at least that company is uh, using things, use resources efficiently, right? They are we can see some kind of efficiency. That's why the company is not dying quickly. Right now, if you look at the situation B and that cell, so every aspect is high, right? So efficiency, one side it is high, and also effectiveness is also high. Now when the efficiency and effectiveness both are high, so that company is growing, right? So that now they have high efficiency and high effectiveness, means they use resources with minimum wastage and low cost, and also they achieve organizational objectives and goals as they expected, right? So that company will grow continuously. Now if you look at the C, and if a company experiences a situation like this, so that company will die quickly. Why? Because they are not either focusing on efficiency or effectiveness. So now you see, when a company is not efficient, what happens is actually they are not using resources efficiently, and they have many wastage, and they have their costs are high. So then, and also they are not achieving their goals as well. So now when a company doesn't achieve none of these objectives, none of these aspects, that company will die quickly, right? So, and if you look at the situation D, and they are actually they are, even though they don't use resources efficiently, and but at least they achieve organizational goals, right? So they can survive in the market, but not, they will not be able to achieve a growth in the market, since they are not focusing on those two aspects, right? So now what this diagram explains us is basically, when we are doing business, we need to focus both efficiency and effectiveness. Now some companies, if we say that we achieve something, now we need to look at how we achieve. We need to see how much money, how much resources, how many resources we have used to achieve that. Now just achieving a goal is not sufficient, so we need to see how we achieved as well. So that aspect explains we need to focus on these two things, efficiency and effectiveness, right? So now you can see in this slide how to balance the effectiveness and efficiency in an organization. So if you look at the first situation, so there you can see that organization has given a higher weight for the effectiveness and highest attention on uh, uh, highest attention on the efficiency. Okay, so then and the other one has attention on effectiveness. So but if you look at the third one, you can see they have given similar consideration for the efficiency and effectiveness. Okay, so and now what we need to do is, now when we are managing business, we need to give uh, equal consideration for efficiency and effectiveness, like you can see in the third situation. So we need to balance the focus or consideration of efficiency and effectiveness. And then we need to talk about next thing that we need to discuss is the productivity. So productivity is all about the relationship between inputs and output. Okay, so that is the relationship between the number of produced goods uh, divided by deliver units of services. Okay, uh, produce goods and deliver units and its quality and the amount of resources used. Now we need to discuss the relationship between the number of goods that we produce and the number of resources we use to produce that, and that is explained in the productivity. So productivity can be improved in an organization by doing two things. Now if you want to increase the productivity, either we can increase the output or else decrease the input, right? So now you can see here productivity can be taken output divided by input, right? So output is, now as I explained previously, output is considered with the effectiveness, right, the level of goal achievement, and input focuses on the level of resources utilization. So if you use resources efficiently, that means you have minimum wastage and low cost, so then you have achieved efficiency. And if you have achieved the output that you expected to achieve, and then you can say we have achieved the effectiveness, right? So that is the relationship between the effectiveness and efficiency with the productivity. So now, after that, we are going to discuss the management process, right? So now, this is what happened in management, and there is a process that we have to go through when we are managing an organization. So this is what happened. Now, I told you and I explained what we mean by resources, right? What resources are, and then we input all these resources into a process where it includes four aspects, four functions, that is planning, organizing, and leading and controlling. And then after this, with this process, we get output. So that is production and services. So now you can see here, efficiency is focus on this input side, and where effectiveness focuses on the output side, right? So now all these things happen in an environment. Now you can see, uh, now we are going to discuss, now management process include all these four activities and these inputs and output relationship. Now we are going to discuss all these uh, aspect in detail in the next slide, right? So management process. Now, management process, as I told you, it includes four functions, and those are planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Now, when it comes to planning, what we mean by planning is it determines organizational goals and how to achieve them. So that is what we do in planning, right? So and also we select the activities which should be done for accomplishing the organizational goals, and decide how should be done and when should be done, so that those activities are done in the planning stage. And then organizing, when it comes to organizing, what we do is basically we divide all these tasks among different people, right? Now, so let's take a look at this. Organizing involves delegating authority to the relevant persons or group of persons for fulfilling the activities which are identified in the planning stage, right? So organizational involve assign the task, allocating the resources, and delegating the authority. Now, if we just allocate the task, that will not be sufficient for a person to do that task, right? Now, and we need to delegate the authority as well, right? So if someone tells me to get things done from 5 employees, I need the authority for that as well, right? If I'm not having the required authority, I will not be able to assign tasks and get things done from those employees. Okay, so those things are done in the organizing stage, and that is the second stage of the management process. So once you, now first we decide what we need to achieve and the goals we set, and then we allocate, and also we identify the tasks that we need to do in the first stage, planning stage, and then we divide those tasks among different employees, different persons, and we give the authority as well. And then once we do all these two things, next thing that we have to do is uh, we need to lead them, right? So by just providing the work and giving the work, allocating the work and delegating the work will not be sufficient, right? We need to see whether, I mean, we need to motivate, we need to give kind of leadership to get things done from them. So that's happening in the leading, right? Leading is the process of providing instructions to the employees for achieving decided targets, monitoring them and providing the right direction. So we need to provide the right direction and monitor them, and also motivate them. So all these things are happen in the leading, and also controlling. So controlling involves gaining excellent outcome through business operations by comparing expected outcome with actual outcome. Now here what we do is basically, now I told you in the plan stage, we set goals, we determine organizational goals. Now finally, after we go through these two stages, we need to see whether we have achieved what we plan to achieve, right? So if not, we need to take corrective actions. So that's happened in the controlling stage. Now if I take an example, now let's say a company wants to achieve or company wants to increase its sales by 10%. So that is what we do in the planning stage. And now we say that uh, we set an organizational goals that we need to increase by our sales by 10%. And also we need to do these activities. Right now, let's say we need to increase our awareness program and we need to increase our marketing activities. We identify the activities that we need to do as well. And then we come to the second stage, organizing, and we divide all these tasks and then delegate these tasks to different employees. So you should do the market awareness program, and you should do advertising, and you should do sales promotions, and you should do something, you should do like you should manage the customer relationship. Likewise, we delegate all these tasks to different employees. So now the organizing is done, and then once we delegate all these tasks, we need to see whether they are doing that or not. If they are not doing, we need to see why they are not doing it, and we need to give some kind of motivation for them, right? So that's what we do in the lead-in. And finally, after all these things, we need to see whether we have achieved 10% increment in our sales or not, right? So that is what we call controlling. So that's what basically we do in management, and it is a process where we do all these 4 stages, right? So that's called management process. Okay, so now the person who does all these activities in an organization called a manager, right? An individual who achieves goals through other people. Now, why we say that when it comes to defining manager is because every organization uh, get things done from other people. So manager involves to get things done from others, right? So even when we define management, we explain that management is all about the art of getting things done from others, right? So and also manager is the person who does organizational management activities, the activities that we explained before, and planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. In other words, manager is the person who leads organization limited resources for accomplishment of the organizational goals. Now, so we know that the available resources are limited. So according to our needs and wants, so the resources are limited. So when we are going to use these limited resources to basically fulfill unlimited wants, now we need to use them with a proper management, right? So uh, that's why in order to achieve or accomplish organizational goals, so that's where the management is involved. Okay, and also today when it comes to today's situation, successful manager become a successful manager in a business organization is a challenge. Why? The reason for that is because manager uh, have to, or manager has to like transform his personal identity into a management identity. Now every person has their own beliefs and attitudes and personality, right? So you can't work with the same personal identity when it comes to managing an organization. Why? Because organization involves different cultures, and which are different from our personal culture, and different people. So then we have to understand the management identity and the organizational culture, and based on that we need to adapt, right? So that's why it has become a challenge. Now you can't manage the things in the same in an organization in the same way that you manage things in your personal life, right? So we need to move from the personal identity to management identity. So we define a manager. Now, if I go back and just give you a brief on what we discussed so far. Okay, so first we define management, and I gave you few definitions for management, right? And then we talk about the nature of management. So characteristics, and then we identify what organizational resources, and then purposes of an organization. So we can divide these purposes into three. And then we talk about efficiency and effectiveness, what we mean by efficiency and what we mean by effectiveness, right? So then the effect and of effectiveness and efficiency on organizational primary purposes, right? So how it affects the impacts to the purposes. And then we talk about balancing effectiveness and efficiency. And then we talk about productivity. So then after that, we talk about the management process. And under that, we discuss all these four functions that are included in the management process. And then we define who is a manager. Okay, so then now we know who manager is, and who is a manager. And then we are going to talk about classification of managers. Okay, so when we classify managers, we can do it based on two criterias. So one is horizontal differences, and the other one is based on vertical differences. So based on horizontal means uh, we identify in the horizontal differences, we identify two types of managers. One is general manager, and the general managers and the functional manager. So general manager is a person who carry out more than one function, right? So that's why we say he's a generalist, right? So if and in that case he managed more than one function, so that's they are called general managers. And then we can see, now you can see in a business organization there are different functions: HRM, marketing, production, and finance. So likewise, we have different managers for different functions. So those are called functional managers. Okay. And then the other classification is the vertical differences. Now, according to this category, you can see uh, there are three levels that we identify in this uh, classification, right? So basically in here, the managers are classified according to the level of organizational hierarchy. So we identify different levels in the hierarchy of the organization, and based on that, we divide managers into three different levels. So the people who are who are directly involved in making decisions and strategic decisions into an organization are at the top. And then there are managers for each and every functions, like we said, marketing and HR and production. So for those functions, we have middle managers, and there are some managers who are directly involved with the operation. So those are called lower level managers, right? So we are going to explain one by one. So, so according to the vertical differences, as I told you, basically we categorize managers based on their hierarchical level, and first level managers are the lower level, you can say another word, lower level managers. So these are the people who supervise and coordinate the task of operational employees. Okay, so they actually monitor the operational level employees, right? So examples, line supervisor, uh, group leader, you can take as examples. Now if I take as an example a garment factory, so there are supervisors, quality supervisors, and team leaders who directly monitor the operational employees' work. So those are called first level managers. And then we can see middle level managers. Actually, what they do is they monitor lower level managers and report their work to the top level. Okay, so now you can see here, they are the person who launch policies, strategies, plans, which are decided by the top management of the organization. So top management decide certain plans and strategies, and middle managers, they execute those strategies. Okay, uh, and middle management actually works as a bridge between the lower level management and the top level management, right? So you can see examples: head of departments and head of divisions, like say a marketing head, HR head, and production head, right? So head of the production department likewise. And top level, so top level, actually they are representing a small group in an organization, and they responsible for all, like taking all strategic decisions, right? And expansion of business, and future mission and vision, all these large scale and strategic decisions are made by the what we call top level managers. Okay, so and now if I tell you some examples: general manager, chief executive officer, chairman, can be taken as examples for top level managers. Okay, so then we need to talk about the management roles. Now when now we define managers and the level of managers, what kind of managers you can see in an organization, different levels. And then we can see the roles. Then we need to see the roles that are played by the managers, right? So management roles. So here now we identify mainly 10 types of management roles introduced by Henry Mintzberg. Okay, so these roles are categorized under three main roles, and there are some sub roles that are coming under these three main roles. Okay, so now three main roles a manager plays are interpersonal roles and informational roles and decisional roles, right? So now if I give you a brief about these three roles. Interpersonal means when a manager works in an organization, he always has to work, has to work with people, right? So he plays many role in between people. So that's why we say interpersonal. In between persons, he plays many roles. So those are all these roles he played related to between people are called interpersonal roles, right? And then informational roles, and then actually nowadays uh, we have to work with we have to deal with many information, right? So and we need to give certain information to certain parties, and we need to get certain information, and we need to share them, we need to distribute them, we need to collect them. Many activities we need to do with related to information, right? So when we are working with these information, so a manager has to play certain roles, right? And those are called actually informational roles. And decisional roles, now obviously every manager has to uh, continuously make decisions, right? So it's all about managing, is all about making decisions, right? So decisions uh, roles means making decisions and involve all these decisional related activities, right? So these are the main roles a manager plays. Now let's take a look at what are coming under each main roles. Okay, so first one, let's get started from interpersonal role. And there are three sub roles that are coming under the interpersonal roles. So that is, those are actually figurehead and a leader and liaisons, and then so the figurehead has the responsibility to fulfill the organization's social and legal activities as well as to represent other occasions as a manager. So figurehead, now we need, manager has to represent the organization, right? Some like social gathering and all these activities. So he or she has an ability to persuade and inspire others as a figurehead. So, and when a manager represent an organization, he must be able to like persuade and inspire others about their organization. And leader, under this, he provide leadership of group of people. So as a manager, he needs to provide the leadership for its employees, give some kind of motivation, and take the responsibility for certain activities. So that is the leader role. And then third one, manager has to communicate with the internal and external parties. So then he needs to have this communicational network and have this communication flow. So that is called liaisons under the interpersonal role. And then informational roles. So there are another three roles that a manager plays. So monitor, and monitor means like manager always control things, observe things, examine things whether they are happening as they expect. And then when it comes to disseminator, uh, where there are different stakeholders who are involved in an organization. So when it comes to these stakeholders, they have their different expectations. And for that, we need to provide the required information to these needed parties or different parties. So that's called disseminator. Uh, and also spokesperson means the manager represent for the organization, and it is constructed agreement for the organization, and also they have responsibility to communicate about the organization as well and organization goal to the external parties. Now when it comes to certain activities, he need to go as a spokesperson and he need to go as a representative of the organization. When it comes to signing an agreement and when it comes to associating certain activities, he needs to go as a spokesperson. So that's what we mean by the spokesperson. And then decisional roles. So there are basically four criteria. Now entrepreneur, like as an entrepreneur, so with the term itself, we know what who an entrepreneur is. Basically, entrepreneur has to come up with new creative ideas. That is entrepreneurship. And so developing new ideas, introducing new things, and that kind of role he has to play in an organization. So that is called entrepreneur. And then disturbance handler. So when we work with different people in an organization, we come across many disputes among different people, and we face many disturbances, right? So when we run an organization, so manager has to manage all these disturbances. So that's called disturbance handler. And then a resource allocator. Now, as we explained at the beginning, we need to allocate resources for different activities in an organization. So that's called resource allocator. And also negotiator. Now there are different negotiations that happen in an organization. Now when it comes to signing an agreement, so maybe like signing with agreement with the customers and all these things, and also deciding and making new strategies inside the organization, they have to make many negotiations, right? So when they're doing these negotiations, or manager has to involve in these all negotiations. So then he plays a negotiator role. Okay, so those are the 10 roles that a manager plays according to Henry Mintzberg. So then to do all these activities and to play all these activities, basically in management, we identify three main skills that manager needs to have, right? So those are technical skills, interpersonal skills, and humans, or we can say another word, human skills and conceptual skills. Okay, so if I take a look at these skills separately, so technical skills, more of technical related activities, right? Maybe like producing something, production related knowledge, operating machines, and functions of those machines, and technical aspects, and all these skills actually we call technical skills. Now you can see the explanation. Technical skills means the expertise of performance of special activity. This means that the method of using instrument, techniques, and other methods which are important to organizational production. Okay, so and the other one, interpersonal skills or human skills, I can tell you simply, the ability to work with people, right? So uh, we have different, as I told you, now in an organization we meet and find different people, come from different cultures and background, right? So then when we are working with different personalities and different people, so we need to have the ability to work with those people, right? And to achieve something or achieve common goal, working with different types of people. So that's, for that you need to have human skills. And conceptual skills means like ability to coordinate and integrate of all the interests and activities, and also like to think logically and to make strategic decisions. You need to have the conceptual skills, right? So now then if you look at these different skills requirement at different levels of managers. Now you can see here uh, in the left side, you can see different levels of managers, top level and the middle and the first line managers. Now, if you look at the requirement of skills, so basically top level management, they need more conceptual skills, right? But when it comes to technical skills, they don't need that much. I mean, they need very less amount of technical skills, right? So, and when it comes to first line managers, they need more of uh, technical skills, but a less amount of conceptual skills, right? So what we need to, the most important thing here is, irrespective of your level, you need to have human skills equally, whether you are a top level manager or a middle level manager or a first line manager, right? So wherever you are in the hierarchy, so you need equal amount of human skills. Why? Because we have to work with human in an organization, right? So even though we can see some kind of automations nowadays in in organization, but still there is human involvement, right? Uh, so then we need to have that skills. Okay, so that is the end of the today's session, and I'm going to give you a brief about what we discussed today. Okay, so basically we started from uh, definition, yeah, and then we discussed nature of management, what are the characteristics and resources and purposes of organizations, and when we talk about effectiveness and efficiency, and how it affect to the organizational primary purposes, right? So whether we focus only the efficiency or sometimes only the effectiveness, right? So how it affects, and also how we need to balance efficiency and effectiveness, and also the productivity. So then management process, and we say that in the management process, it includes four management functions. Those are planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So then we define manager and classified manager and the roles, and also identify classification under the two classifications, And under the vertical differences, we identify 3 different levels, and also the roles played by the manager, right? So, and also finally the skills which is required for a manager, right? So those 3 skills, and then finally we talk about how it affects, and the requirement differs from level of uh, managers and their levels, right? So what kind of skills we need to have according to their managerial level, right? So with that, actually we are going to wind this up, and so we hope that you learned something from today's session, and we actually plan to have some more sessions regarding these subjects. So we will see you in those coming sessions.
Mr. Chamber clearly explained what is the management, basic concept of management, skill required for managers and roles of managers. I think you have already understood what those concepts. Thank you very much, Mr. Chamber. Tomorrow also we are having another session. Join with that also. Thank you.